Lucas Kyle is finally back, and I know a lot of us have been waiting for that moment. But as exciting as his return was, I actually don't think Lucas was the biggest reveal of Silo Season 3, Episode 3. This episode gave us something much more unsettling. It made us question what it actually means to be human. And today, I'm breaking down 5 clues that you probably missed that point to why the algorithm may not believe memories define who we are, why Daniel is starting to make me a little bit nervous, and why the founders may have been manipulating the truth long before the silos were ever built. And I'll also be discussing the unanswered questions I have after watching this episode. And don't worry, this video contains no book spoilers because I haven't even read the books yet. But before I get started, let me introduce myself if you're new here. And if you're not new here, then welcome back. My name is Brandi, and I realized that you could be on any channel in the world, but you're right here with me, and I really do appreciate that. So please go ahead and like this video. It really does help the channel out, and I greatly appreciate it. And also subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy watching TV show breakdowns. Now, clue number 1 is the algorithm seemingly having a completely different definition of what it means to be human. We see the algorithm talking to Camille and convincing her to release the vitamin D memory suppression protocol into the water supply for a reset that will slowly erase the memories of everyone in the silo. Camille is hesitant, rightfully so, and the algorithm tells her, "You fear that loss of memory means loss of self-consciousness, loss of identity, the end of personal existence." And that line tells us something huge. The algorithm doesn't seem to believe that memories are essential to preserving humanity. To the algorithm, basic survival appears to be the ultimate objective. If people are alive, if the silo remains stable, then this is considered a success. But I think the writers are immediately challenging that idea through Juliette. Later in the episode, Juliette surprises Sims outside his son's school. And Sims is furious at first. He tells her that his son still wakes up afraid after she previously held him and his mom hostage. Then Juliette, she says something heartbreaking, and I think it really softened up Sims. She says, well, at least he remembers and he has a dad. I don't even remember what it feels like to have a dad. And that line completely changed the scene for me. Juliette isn't mourning the loss of information. She's mourning the loss of who she used to be. She can't remember what it felt like to have a father. That's not just a missing memory, that's a missing piece of her identity. And I think that Sims realizes it too, because a few scenes later, he pulls his son out of school just so they could spend time together as a family. So suddenly, making memories feels more important to Sims than work. Then Camille tells him that she's planning on releasing the vitamin D into the water supply, and Sims understands exactly what that means. He says it's the same thing you're doing to Juliette, just slower and slower. And Camille's response absolutely had me emotional. She tells Sims that if it comes down to it, she wants their son to just survive, even if that means forgetting them. That isn't just a debate about the memory protocol, it's a debate about what it means to save humanity. The algorithm believes that preserving life is simply enough. Juliette seems to believe that our memories, our relationships, and our identity are what make life worth living in the first place. If you've been watching my silo videos, then you already know where I stand. I don't think these silos were built simply to protect humanity. I think that they're one part of some type of massive experiment. And this episode gives us evidence that supports that theory. And here's where my mind started going down the whole sci-fi rabbit hole. What if the founders aren't just testing whether humanity can survive underground? What if they're trying to answer a much bigger question? How much of a person can you erase before they're no longer human? Or here's an even wilder idea. What if the founders aren't trying to save humanity at all? What if they're trying to determine how much of humanity can be removed before we're no longer human? And if that's the experiment, then this story isn't just about surviving inside of a silo. It's about discovering what makes us human in the first place. And clue number 2 is no silo to silo contact. That is forbidden, which we already kind of assumed, but now is confirmed. One of the biggest reveals in this episode wasn't just seeing our boy Lucas again, it was where he was hiding. Lucas hid in the mines. Now, the mines have always felt off to me. They're dangerous. Hardly anyone talks about them. And the average citizen in the silo, it seems like they almost know nothing about what's going on down there. And every mystery show has that one place nobody's allowed to go. And now we find out on this episode, that's where Orla's body was found. I cannot even believe that she is dead. So I'm not sure what Lucas found down there, and I don't know if the mines actually do connect to old tunnels, abandoned infrastructure. But after this episode, I definitely don't think that they're just digging for metal or down in the mines. So let's back up here. Camille, she figures out that Juliette has been asking questions about Lucas to Mark Chambers. Now, Mark, he used to work in the mines. She tells the algorithm that she thinks that Lucas is down there. And the algorithm says if he is trying to dig horizontally and make contact with the other silos, any silo to silo contact is a violation that leads to an immediate safeguard. But if these silos were built to save humanity, why would talking to another silo be one of the worst things one could possibly do? Now think about it. What happens if Silo 18 finds out another silo has a different set of rules? Or they remember the before times, or maybe they overthrew their leadership years ago. Then everything the founders have built will start falling apart. It kind of reminds me of real life. The easiest way to control a group of people is to keep them separated. Because the second that people start comparing experiences, they start asking questions. And questions are dangerous. But then another thought hit me. Maybe the founders aren't just protecting the experiment. Maybe they're protecting themselves. Because one silo rebelling is a problem. But 50 silos coordinating together, that's a revolution that no amount of raiders or judicial could stop. And the next clue involves Daniel. Now, I have to admit that episode 3 made me look at Daniel just a little bit differently. Up until now, I viewed him as possibly being a good guy. I still think that Daniel was involved in the building of the silos. However, I previously thought that Senator Thurman and the government officials, maybe they used Charlotte as leverage to get Daniel on board with the project. To be clear, I do think that Daniel genuinely loves Charlotte and he wants to find out what happened to her. But there are a few things that aren't just sitting right with me. First, he accepted the doctor's explanation for Charlotte's memory loss surprisingly quickly. And then we see that Daniel, he finally hears the secret recording from Charlotte's mission, and whatever was on that tape clearly shakes him. And shortly after, he tells Helen that they need to go back and get that recording from Steve. And he says, the people I work for need to know. And no, I don't mean those shadowy creeps who finance campaigns. Well, wait, Daniel, what do you mean? Who exactly are his people? Now, I immediately thought it was shady, but again, just playing devil's advocate, I had to look at it a different way and consider that maybe Daniel's talking about his congressional district, the people that he serves. In fact, Helen alluded to this in the season 2 finale. But that line immediately made me suspicious. Is Daniel actually working for someone that we've never met? Or does he simply still believe there's someone higher up who can fix this? Because in the silo, we've seen this pattern before. Bernard, he believed he was protecting humanity. Sims, he believed that he was protecting the silo. And we see that Camille, she believes she's protecting nearly 10,000 lives. They're good people, but they're serving systems that may not deserve their loyalty. So maybe Daniel isn't exactly a bad guy. Maybe he's just another person who still believes the system is worth trusting. And that brings me to an even bigger question. What if the system has been lying from the very beginning? We've been told that Iran detonated a dirty bomb. We've also been told that the U.S. launched a retaliatory mission. And I'm not exactly saying the war was fake, but I'm not certain it was real either. But I do know that every single person that we see who gets closer to the truth, such as Charlotte, Helen, and now Steve, they end up being watched or silenced. So I am starting to wonder if the official version of events was carefully written to justify what came next. Maybe the war wasn't the reason the silos were built. Maybe it was the reason people agreed to enter them. Which leads me to clue number 4, which involves the information we see on Steven's computer. I think episode 3 really wants us to question something much bigger than Charlotte's mission. I think it wanted us to ask the question, again, what if the official story itself is the lie? So we witnessed Daniel and Helen, they track down Steve, a guy who says he and other like-minded people intercept government communications to hold powerful people accountable. And before Steve will even let them hear the recording, he clones Daniel's congressional badge. And that immediately tells me this isn't some random conspiracy theorist. He's part of an organized underground network dealing in classified information. Then, while Daniel and Helen are there, we get a glimpse of Steve's computer screen. And this is where things get interesting. The dark web isn't discussing just one theory about what happened before the silos, it's discussing dozens. Some users blame secret military experiments, others mention low-frequency acoustic weapons, someone references leaked government testing, and another one thinks it's aliens involved. At first, I thought the writers were hinting that one of these theories was the answer, but now after I rewatched the episode, I think they're doing something much smarter. I think they're just showing us what the world was like before the silos. Nobody knew what was true anymore. One person even says that it was HARP. Another says it was acoustic crowd control. Someone else says that it's alien. So again, there's just so much conflicted information. And that sounds familiar, right? That's exactly what we've been watching inside of the silos. The founders just don't suppress information, they control it. And maybe they learned how to do that before the silos were ever even built. And then there's the private message Steve receives while Daniel and Helen are still there. It simply says, "I've tracked you." And later when Daniel and Helen return, Steve's apartment is completely ransacked and he's gone. So it seems like someone was looking for that recording and they were looking for Steve too. And that changes how I look at the entire pre-silo storyline, especially when we combine this with the mysterious man that we keep seeing lurking in the background. First, he's watching Charlotte at the train station. Then he's outside of the memory clinic. Next, he's at the Veterans Hospital. Then he's lurking in the background when we see Helen getting fired. And that can't be a coincidence. Whether he's trying to protect them or silence them, he clearly knows far more than he's letting on. And that's what has me thinking, maybe this isn't just a cover-up. Maybe we're watching the cover-up of the event that led to the silos in the first place. And clue number 5 involves a theory I have about the memory suppression protocol. And I might be reaching on this one, just let me know down below. But this episode let us know that the algorithm can detect lies. And it also may have revealed how the algorithm knows so much about some people in the silo. Back in season 3, episode 2, the algorithm showed Camille this graph. And the blue line, it represented the calming value of having Juliette Nichols as mayor. And the red line represented the danger she posed if the memory protocol failed. If those two lines crossed, the algorithm said Juliette would have outlived her usefulness. And this graph and that statement have been stuck in my head all week. Because how could the algorithm possibly know that? It's not like the algorithm handed out surveys to see how everyone felt and if they were calmer because Juliette returned and that she was mayor. So where is this data coming from? But then this episode gave us another clue. When Camille lies about why she let Juliette escape, the algorithm immediately, it cuts her off mid-sentence. And it says, Camille, it's clear by the stress in your voice and your cortisol levels that you're lying. Now, wait a second. How does the algorithm know Camille's cortisol levels? At first, I thought maybe the vault simply has incredibly advanced, maybe biometric scanners that can analyze someone's breathing, their voice, their heart rate, and maybe their body language in real time. And that's definitely possible, and honestly, it's probably the simplest explanation. What if the memory protocol isn't just sending information into people's brains? What if it's also sending information back, somewhat of a feedback loop? We've spent several several episodes talking about memory suppression, the drugs, or whatever technology is behind them, and how they clearly affect people's memories. But what if that's only half of the system? What if every resident is constantly generating data that the algorithm can access? Not necessarily their thoughts, but things like stress levels, emotional responses, or any physiological changes, and whether the protocol is actually working. That would explain how the algorithm can calculate something as specific as the calming value of Juliette Nichols across an entire population of nearly 10,000 people. It isn't just watching Juliette, it's measuring how everyone else responds to Juliette. The algorithm isn't just interested in controlling people, it's trying to understand them. And remember, not everyone gets the same level of this memory suppression drug, and it seems to be different ways that they're administering it. So here's my question. Is the memory protocol simply suppressing memories, or is it part of a much larger two-way system perhaps that's collecting data from certain people inside the silo? Now let's move on to the question section of this video. My first question is, what was Lucas Kyle doing in those mines for 3+ months? Was he really hiding down there the entire time? How did he survive? And remember, all of those missing supplies we heard about a few episodes ago, I'm starting to wonder if those supplies were actually being smuggled to Lucas. If that's the case, he couldn't have done it alone. So who was helping him? Because somebody had to be keeping him alive and giving him information. My next question is, who killed Orla? I really feel like we have a true whodunit on our hands. At first, I was suspicious of her boyfriend. After all, he previously dated Glenda Harwood, so that means he dated 2 women that were connected to supply. Do you think Camille will ultimately side with Juliette or the algorithm? Now, she's been walking a fine line all season. She's trying to protect both the people of the silo and the system itself. But after episode 3, it feels like she's about to be forced to pick a side. And I'm thinking she may straddle the fence for just a bit longer, but she'll ultimately side with Juliette and all of the other rebellious people in the silo. And of course, I still have the really big questions, such as what's really going on outside? Is the world truly toxic, or have we been lied to? How were people even chosen to enter the silos in the first place? And also, I'm still waiting on a reveal of who's related to who. Now, someone put in the comments that Evelyn looks so much like Helen, and now I can't stop thinking about other possible descendants as well. But that's all I have for today, guys. If you made it this far in the video, please do me a favor and drop down a purple heart below. And as always, let me know if I missed any clues and tell me your theories as well. And also, let me know what other shows you are watching. Right now, I am rewatching Black Mirror on Netflix. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. It's a sci-fi anthology series. And since we've been talking so much about memories, I recommend watching season 1, episode 3 of Black Mirror, The Entire History of You. And it is an anthology series, so you don't have to necessarily watch a whole season. You could just pick one standalone episode to watch. But nonetheless, guys, I hope you all stay safe out there. And until I see you next time, peace.